Gate buildings are dotted throughout the worlds of Pokemon games and act as frequent checkpoints along a trainer's journey, often separating major cities and routes. These odd and somewhat uncanny buildings litter earlier Pokemon titles, with the experience of setting foot in one so fundamental and basic to the experience that it's probably a familiar sight to even the most casual and surface-level players. Take Kanto, for instance, the first and continually persistent world of these games. Players will find themselves in a gate before they even have a single badge, virtually just moments into play, with the buildings separating the landmarks of Route 2 in Viridian Forest. It's a pleasant little checkpoint, tiley flooring, potted plants sitting along the walls, a small seating area, and some passerby presumably on an adventure that looks something a little like yours. But all that said though, there is very little here. This is the near universal experience with gates in general. It's not just like this because it's the beginning of the game. The strong majority of these buildings at any point on any one of these journeys will have no mechanical offerings inside of them, and instead exist as perhaps a different kind of checkpoint. Not one for your character to breathe, so to speak, but for you as the player. But that line of thought invites all these questions. To put them simply, why? Why do these creatures exist, and why are they everywhere? There already are checkpoints in these games, and they're really, really good ones too. Pokemon Centers are such perfect hubs and these incredible cores to the way that the experience of these games works. They act as waypoints, healing stations, storage centers, town halls even. Plus it doesn't hurt that they are consistently fun to look at and be inside of. Pokemon Centers earned being classic, and yet gates persisted. And they didn't just persist either, they full-on thrived. Gates are just about everywhere in these older worlds in some form or another. You'd be hard-pressed to avoid them, even, in some cases. That's how incredibly widespread they are. But don't get me wrong, they're completely inoffensive as game constructs. I am not frustrated in the slightest that I have to take these 10 extra steps and maybe see a few more people as I finish the journey from Route 208 to Hearthome City. And if someone is frustrated, well, I'm thinking some thoughts. But depending on the day, I might just be pondering that original question. Why? Because it doesn't really make a difference either way, but they chose to include these constructs. They intentionally put them everywhere, and stuff like this doesn't just exist either. Someone made this, so what is the meaning that I'm failing to understand? Let's start with the simple and on-paper answer, because unbeknownst to the average player and their experience in these worlds, gates were an actual answer, a literal answer, to a coding problem that presented itself in the first run of games, and will continue needing attention in subsequent gens. They wanted to present the map as this relatively singular, yet also sprawling world, but seamlessly loading in massive hub areas like Saffron City, which is surrounded by different areas with their own unique textures, would threaten to crash the game because of the pressure that this would put on the cartridge's RAM. And so gates were invented to fix this problem without ruining things too much for player immersion. They function a lot like loading zones to give the game a break when loading in new areas, while also not taking the player too far out of the action. We can actually get a glimpse of the benefit that this provides in Gen 4 games, or at least what things would look like without the gates, making them easier. Using a walk-through walls cheat code and heading to a city like Hearthome and Sinnoh will display this bizarre, almost placeless, snow-white wasteland. The ground has pretty much entirely failed to generate within the town itself. Numerous buildings have partially or entirely failed to materialize, and these weird grid-covered hitbox things are hanging around all over the place. And you know, I can't deny that there's this dystopic and sort of surreal beauty to this landscape, but it's hardly functional, and the town proper is much prettier, and of course, more immersive. And all we have to do to get that proper look is use the gate like the developers intended. Places looking like this, or failing to spawn in entirely, is the problem that the gates solve. And I don't know about you, but I generally do not care hugely for loading screens, so it's cool that they designed gates as this in-world alternative. It's still a bit odd, for sure, but because there's stuff in here, and the buildings were very much baked into the fabric of the universe, it doesn't feel like you're leaving gameplay so much as something like taking a breath. Per that problem-solving lens, these are tried and true liminal spaces. And liminal not referring specifically to the aesthetic, even though I would be willing to award that descriptor, but that gates are literally places of transition. For that brief moment where you take those 10 or so steps, you exist in a state of in-between. You aren't in either place that these buildings are connecting. We are nameless, placeless, almost void-bound even, for this small pocket of time. It can feel very uncanny to exist here if you happen to stop and make these considerations, but it can also feel expressive and vibrant. and completely and entirely lived in, just like everything else in these beautiful worlds. To fully condemn gates as placeless and liminal voids would be the most cruel and pessimistic denial of the developers giving their absolute all to squeeze life into this construct. It's not like they were hellbent or even really wanted to have these in the world in the first place, but it's so clear that once the decision was made, they tried their hardest to make the best of a weird situation. This is, to me, what puts these buildings into contention for the most important place in Pokemon. It's not important in the way that they're a central destination, or literally perform some essential purpose, or that the game revolves around them in some way. They are important because they exist as an emblem, perhaps even the greatest emblem, of why Pokemon games are so great. No matter the circumstance, every space and every moment gets used for storytelling and experience crafting. The worlds are filled to the brim with little details, interactions, and bonuses to make them feel lived in, while also painting this massive tapestry of experiences and world building to make you feel like you're simultaneously on this epic quest. It's the reason I'm surrounded by beauty, because they spared no expense when it comes to immersion. Even in the case of these transitional, coding problem buildings, they're here regardless of whether or not they wanted them to be, but they made the most of them. They still decided to make them real places in this world, lived in rest stops with their own stories, secrets, and meanings to explore. So let's dive deep into the depths that these places actually offer. I already mentioned a little bit the attention to aesthetics, and since it's the first and most immediate thing about gates, let's start off by taking a look at the design itself. I've always gotten airport terminal or maybe hotel lobby vibes from this decor. Tiley flooring, neatly trimmed potted saplings and shrubs, and maybe even an area for taking a load off, all combined to make a tidy little room that's pleasant and inoffensive. It's comfortable enough to take a rest in, but also visually emphasizing that you have other places to be. You might see decor like this in a waiting room at a doctor's office or at a rest stop on the highway. And it gives me some serious appreciation for the look in the game, because it's like someone in this world designed it for that purpose, rather than an omniscient developer. And I know that in ultimate practice, those two aspects kind of boil down to the same thing, but the important bit is that in-universe purpose. It was designed to mean something to the people of the world, and not just you and me as players. And even further, it was done so with a style suite in mind that offers a touch of personality to make it hold in place as an actual memory. We can probably most appreciate this element of things when visually comparing the differences between gates across generations. The Kanto gates really aspire to a bit of a lazier feel and can even kind of double as third places with the occasional seating or hangout spot, while Johto gates boast a much more compact design, but also one that's slightly brighter and more bustling. The rare Hoenn gate appears almost like a storefront with more detailed decorations and flooring, and it's a pretty perfect look as well because these gates are exclusively for attractions, as they are only used in this region for getting access to the cycling road and safari zone. Sinnoh's gates are a little more in touch with the rustic tone of the region and feature stone floors and frequent ambling passerby, contrasting with Unova's modern and streamlined design that packs bright colors and TVs flashing current events. And then my personal favorite, no surprise, are the gates in Kalos. These stony paths and archways have a perfect home in the region of royals and beauty. The cherry on top is the dedicated musical theme, and just like everything else, it's not some filler piece to separate the connecting areas with something other than silence. It's this moving and heartfelt tune to perfectly signify the occasion. So let's stop in a gate and just listen for a moment, even if we do have to return to our journey real soon. It's this drifting and relaxing tune with just a touch of melancholy in it. It's the perfect musical accompaniment to look back on an adventure with fondness, but also a longing for the times that are only yet to come. I mean, it's just simply a thing of beauty. I can't find another way to describe it. This is almost unimaginably good. And yes, Gen 5 has its own unique theme as well, that is also inexplicably, but not so inexplicably incredible. I'm not ignoring it. I just really like Kalos. But we can still listen to the Gen 5 one though. More of the same, just a less watery sounding style. Both songs are genuinely incredible considering what they were made for, and then go far beyond that original purpose. They're simply masterpieces. They put all this energy towards how they look, and sound, and feel. It's the key to making them feel at home in a world. But it didn't stop there. Gates were mechanically integrated, with stories and gameplay, and then further filled with their own unique little pockets of minutia. Probably most classically, gates were integrated as a key part of Gen 1 storytelling, being used to block the roads to Saffron and create the winding flow of the map in Kanto. Gatekeepers will have you turn around when attempting to access the central city, and in order to progress, you'll have to wind and weave through tougher alternative routes to the region, like with the underground passageways and the rock tunnel cave. It makes it so these 4 specific gates surrounding Saffron City get contextualized into full-on security checkpoints more than just passageways. The roads are closed because of the Team Rocket takeover in the city, and the guards will only let you through once you bribe them with a tasty drink. They're all dying of thirst because they've been condemned to the purgatory of this hallway, with their only pleasure in life being barring children from fighting Sabrina. Pokemon's a little weird sometimes. It makes for the inclusion of this little RPG mission too, because you have to figure out where to get the drink for the guards off the clue in their dialogue that they're feeling thirsty. I describe this little sequence as classical because through all of this, the buildings actually end up being in focus for such a decent chunk of the game. The gates were right there, so they decided to use them. No tool left unused for the full scope of this world. Life just frequently happens inside of gates. Some of my favorite moments in Pokemon period are the occasions where a battle happens inside one of these bustling hallways. There's a certain poetry to getting ambushed by Barry or having a showdown with Bianca in these places that are the very literal crossroads of life. It so strongly brings attention to how you and your rival aren't just having a battle, but are testing each other at a point in the journey. Both this showdown and its location are fleeting functions of time. The two of us are really on an adventure. But it's hardly just battles, as you'll get stopped for all kinds of things in these transient rooms. The professor sends an assistant to give you a new tool to use on your journey, and they figured this is the best place to have them camp out for you. It's generally a hard requirement to pass through these, so they couldn't miss you. Other travelers hit it off with you and give you a gift to celebrate the occasion. Things will range from odd and meaningless pieces of nothing to useful and valuable held items or TMs. Perhaps nothing more than a passing ship, but a nice moment all the same. And then if nothing else, there's generally always people to talk to. This got more common as the generations went on and was much less true to begin with, but it's a particular treat regardless because the people in these corridors are just as much travelers as the protagonists. They are here solely as functions of their own journeys, and the resultant variety and intrigue makes the people, even the people behind the desk, more than worth talking to at least once. Which is a great bridge to the last and probably most important thing about gates. They are downright magical places for the player that operates like that. Not just talking to everyone, but exploring every available corner. That player. Gates are filled with the little oddities, minutia, and further weirdness that makes Pokemon games so great to begin with. But I find myself extra compelled because these buildings are the absolute last places that really needs to be. Like sometimes Kanto gates will have the odd second floor, sporting an additional lounge area and window walls with binoculars for gazing out at the wonder of the region. And while you can't actually look into the binoculars, they do have little blurbs whimsically describing the sights. There's a man fishing. It's the Pokemon Tower. There's a long path over water far away. It's the Celadon department store. A large shining bird is flying towards the sea. Oh my god, what Pokemon is this and is it catchable? There's also this Johto clerk in the gate above Goldenrod who asks you to deliver a letter. And then I guess because of Pokemon rules, he attaches it to a Spearow and puts that in your party. It is the mandate of Diggersby that all postage is delivered by the proper handler. And so you've got the mail, but also this guy's pet bird, which isn't particularly unusual or anything. Kenya is a pretty average Spearow. It's just weird it was handed out at all. And further, the choice to actually deliver it is put completely in your hands. If you take it to his friend on Route 31, you can trade the bird in for a TM. But alternatively, you can just completely steal it for yourself. You just simply don't have to turn it in. It fully has a different trainer ID and everything too. So we even get to learn a bit about the identity of one of the clerks as we decide whether or not stealing someone else's Spearow is totally worth it. And yes, it totally is. But if you do bring the whole quest to a head, you'll not only get the TM, but you'll get an HP up for your trouble if you talk to the clerk again. They really thought of everything. Certain gates have the cutest little amenities too. Like it's so nothing, but I am infinitely charmed by the Sinnoh gates having an interactable map plastered on their walls. It feels like such a thoughtful gesture for travelers and almost even like an attempt at a "you are here" sign you might see in a giant mall or parking garage. Obviously it's a little less useful to the player character considering how early a map is put into your bag, but I can still appreciate occasionally using it and furthermore just how aesthetic of a choice this was. It's just a lovely little decoration. It probably pales in comparison to the TVs in Unova though. These things are impactful enough where it kind of makes the gates themselves destinations. These bulletins will display logistics information like the date and the weather, but can also display more involved things like in-world trivia or the location of mass outbreaks. It's substantial enough where it's definitely gotten me to stop plenty of times while I'm fully doing something else. There's a particular apex of design here, because this is a pretty perfect system to get someone to stop and smell the roses, even in a transitional space like this. There's things to concretely interact with, like the odd NPC or gatekeeper, and then lightly useful but still potentially interesting information whizzing by on the screens. You don't have to stop by any means, but it certainly beckons. It's all in the little things. These little hotel lobby amenities give every possible inch of space in these worlds as much meaning as possible. That's the through line here, the little things. Gates are a testament and a compelling argument to the power that giving focus to the little things can have, even in the context of a massive world like Pokemon's. I just can't get over the fact that these constructs were a band-aid solution to a hardware problem. They didn't have to exist in the form that they do at all. They could be ultimately nothing, and yet they had life breathed into them. And now, those same buildings breathe life into every trainer that passes through them. The lengths they went to here to make them real in this way are just kind of unbelievable. Far more than just entities or even the constructs that I just described them as, they are now full-on places because of this choice. People live and experience things inside of these buildings just as much as anywhere else in the world now. All because the developers were unwilling to cave even a little bit on the intended immersion of the overall experience. And of course, there's a lot of nuance to me saying these are the most important places in Pokemon, as these are ultimately emblems more than anything else. But what an important emblem it is to demonstrate that these games will stop at nothing to make the entire experience beautiful. It doesn't matter the place or component, even things that some might consider the least important places in the game. We will make it immersed and make you part of this world. It's what living in a world is all about. That's all I got for you this time, folks. As always, thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it, and I'm surrounded by beauty. Droomish out.